What's up, guys? Derek with Team Evolution here, coming to you with my first place Numeron OTK deck profile that I took to my locals this last week. I know locals is locals, it's all good, but our locals gets quite a bit amount of players for what it is. We got 22 players this past locals, which means we played 5 rounds of Swiss, cut to top 4. I went 4-0-1 in Swiss and won my top 4 match for a total of a 5-0-1 record. So I was super pumped. I haven't played this deck in quite some time. It's one of my favorite decks of all time. I was working on some other decks, wasn't having a lot of success with it, so I said, screw it, I'm gonna rebuild this. And I did well. Every time I play this deck, it just performs every single time. So I get excited about it. So I haven't made a video in a while either, which is also why I wanna make a video for you guys about this deck. So figured I'd put it up, give me a like, give me a subscribe if you want some more content. I always think about the channel, you know, life gets busy. And I do want to continue to put more content up, but I just don't really have as much time as I used to, but it's okay. But yeah, I'm gonna go through the deck real quick, show you what I played. You know, a couple things. This deck, with the current meta, it definitely has some bigger challenges than before, because before this deck could just kind of like, you know, your opponent sets up a bunch of negates and you just kind of walk through the negates, no big deal. This time, like, you know, the meta is very interactive. So while there are decks that put up negates, a lot of the main meta decks, like, you know, Despia and Flunder and Punktarian and, you know, all those different types of decks where there's the Scythe lock and, or, you know, the Calamity lock or like whatever, it's just a lot different than before. So because of that, it changes the way that this deck does kind of play in terms of what you're trying to utilize to break the boards. So I didn't play the Neos package either. I normally play this deck with the Neos package, didn't this time. It's the first time I played it without the Neos package, actually, and I did kind of like it better. So yeah, I'll go through the profile, let you guys know what I played, and I think I'm going to continue trying to play this during the Splight format, because the Splight format, you know, they're just setting up boards that are hard to break. So I think this deck might see success with the Splight format. So, all right. So first of all, going into the Numeron side of it. So 25% of the deck, because I play 40 cards, 25% of the deck is Numeron Network. And I'm sorry for the shadow over here. The lighting in this new room is not the great where I'm sitting. So yeah, so 3 Pathfinder, 3 Wall, obviously the 3 Network and the 1 Terraforming. So you know, without playing the Neos package for that other like big monster side of it, you're basically just relying on facilitating the OTK. That's what the deck is. So 25% of the deck is Numeron Network. You see it pretty often enough that you know, the deck doesn't ever feel inconsistent as much. So it'd be really nice if Terraforming one day came to more than 1, which probably won't happen forever. So, or if we just got something else with more field spell support. All right, next, the best monster in the deck, in my opinion. I played 2 Lava Golem and 2 Godarla. I guess I could just kind of include here, let me kind of scoot these up, because these are all like the interactive monsters here. The 1 copy of Alpha and the 1 copy of Pankratops. So a couple things. For the longest time, I've played 2 Lava Golem and 2 Alpha. I really like Alpha because, just like Pankratops, you can special summon it under its condition, and it's a monster that your opponent just is forced to interact with. So depending on what board you're up against, your opponent has to just interact with this card. Either they negate it or whatever. If not, you know, you're gonna bounce something on their board and be in a good position no matter what. So the card's crazy. However, I took out the 2nd copy of Alpha for the 3rd Lava Golem. Lava Golem is a god card in this deck. So because of the player priority, if you go up against a deck that tries to Scythe lock you, you can basically Lava Golem like the Griffin and the Hulk, right? Or you can Lava Golem the Hulk and the Dagda, or whatever you want to do to like prevent them from just going off. This card is your biggest piece of stopping those situations, because your opponent can't react to it, right? Player priority gives you the option or the ability to play something before your opponent has a chance to activate any of those quick effects, of course. So this card I upped to 3 because of that reason, and because of the way the meta is. It's really strong against Despia too, to force them to get rid of all of their fusions, even if they confuse with it, which 9 times out of 10, they're in a worse position anyways, because even if you have Mirror Jade, or it's like, even if they have Mirror Jade on the board and a Masquerade or whatever, you just Lava Golem. And it's like, okay, even if you have branded in red, you're not really gonna be, maybe you Guardian Chimera, fine. But outside of that, it's just not going to allow them to push further. So this card's crazy. Even at 3, the entire night, like I hardly bricked on it. In fact, I never bricked on it. And I always wanted to draw it because the card was that good. So yeah, I think 3 Lava Golem is a staple moving forward because the card is just so strong. And then, you know, like Alpha, these two definitely put a lot of work in. And Godarla, of course, is for like Flunder and things like that. And we're not using, that's the best kaiju to use with Barrier Statue being a thing. Normally I don't play hand traps in this deck either, but I did decide to go with Gamma. And, oh, sorry, let me find the driver. And I did decide to go with double Ash. So I didn't want to play 3 Ash because I didn't want to clunk up on the hand traps. To be honest, like Gamma's the best one because when you activate Network's effect alone, or if you activate, or if you normal summon like Pathfinder and use its effect, or your opponent tries to just negate anything going first or second, this card's just really, really strong. Plus you play Omega in the side deck or in the extra deck, that way you can interact with cards on their turn to clear your board before you play Network. So this card just puts in a lot of work. It's probably the only hand trap in this deck that I feel is worth it. Obviously you have to play Driver, but that's okay. And I had a couple flex spots because I took out the Numeron or the Neos package. So Ash was like, you know, just the easy, put it in and call it good. And yeah, it too, the card was good. Every time I had it, it was obviously really, really good. So I'm glad that I had the Ash in there. And then the spells, so obviously you're playing double calling. I still wouldn't push this to 3 and have 3 sets of the Numerons because you just don't really have the room for it, first of all. And this card is a brick on its own. So 2 calling, you should be able to OTK your opponent within 2 activations. I do still play the 3 Memories of Hope. I thought about the Desires build because you can max out on like everything. But I don't know, man, like this card, while you can't obviously just, you know, if you don't open the Numeron cards, this card is just dead in the water. There is truth to that. If you don't play this, really your only other true viable option is Desires. And I just don't like Desires personally in this deck. This was the next best thing in my opinion. Helps you draw into your golems, your kaijus, helps you draw into whatever to continue to facilitate an OTK if you manage to get all 4 of them on the board. Because sometimes you end up in a situation where you get all 4 of them and you know you're not going to be able to get the OTK. So if you can draw into other cards that allow you to facilitate it, it's really, really strong. Plus, the way we play our side deck, which we'll go over obviously here shortly, this card comes really good when it comes to that. So yeah, 3 Memories of Hope, this card's still insane. And then just all the powerful cards, right? So 3 Droplet, absolute best card next to Lava Golem. I personally played 3 Triple Tactics, so this is another piece like that I play that you normally will never see in this deck. The reason is that I think that the whole goal of the deck, especially with the way the format is right now, is you're trying to just, again, get your opponent to interact with what you're doing. So whenever you play something, whenever you do something, you're forcing them to interact. When they interact, they're probably activating a monster effect, which means you're going to draw cards, you're going to rip cards out of their hand, or you're going to take a monster after you've established your 4 Numerons to just facilitate more of an OTK. I was considering playing 2 and Change of Heart, but I was testing Change of Heart briefly before, and like I hardly ever saw it, and then the one time I saw it, it just was irrelevant. So I'm like, I'm just going to play 3 of this instead, and it was really good. Every time you see the card, it's just insane. I also got sniped by Nibiru 3 times. I was very surprised because you have to be careful. If you Kaiju or Lava Golem or you normal summon Pathfinder and then try an OTK, your opponent has Nibiru, it sucks. And it happens. So sometimes if your opponent interacts and then you can just look at their hand to make sure they don't have Nibiru, that is really, really good. So yeah, this card is a mainstay in my opinion. Backrow decks aren't a big thing right now, so I only went with 2 Lightning Storm and 1 Harpies. Arguably, this could just be 3 Storms, but I don't know. I think the ability to go like Harpies plus this in the same turn if you needed to is worth it. So yeah, we just play the double Storm and the 1 Harpies. So yeah. And the very last card of the deck, please don't be mad at me, but I did play 3 Mystic Mine. You know, while this card is legal and it is just annoying, this deck doesn't really use it from the standpoint of trying to deck your opponent out, as most decks don't, to be honest, unless you're just playing the pure Mystic Mine, like Poison to the Old Man deck and all that stuff. But the main reason for this, I mean, obviously Pathfinder can search this as well, which is why I like Pathfinder, because it gives you another target. I thought about playing set rotation in the deck too to increase that percentage, but I just don't really think you need it, but I might consider trying to fit it in there somehow. The other thing is, like, really, when you don't have the OTK, this just stalls long enough for you to facilitate the OTK. So, or if you just don't get it, or if your opponent just stops what you're doing, you can just activate mine. Most people don't have an out for it in the main deck, and then it allows you to just draw cards over time until you have enough cards to just go off. And I did that multiple times where you just sit on mine, like you can see the frustration on their face. And yes, you could just play the game where you just grind it down as much as possible, but you never know. And again, there's just moments where it's like, okay, I've racked up enough cards in my hand where I can just go off and just win that way. So if the card gets banned, you know, because the deck doesn't really need this card. It's just a good piece to help the deck stall long enough to get an OTK. It's just going to have to turn into 3 more cards that can just help the deck push. So, yeah, but that's the main deck. So 40 cards. In my eyes, it's close to perfect. You know, there's a few things I kind of want to play. Like I didn't really get to play Imperm. I might take out like not a droplet, like a Pathfinder and like a Gamma for 2 Imperm, so I can play 6 hand traps. I'm not really sure exactly what I want to do, but yeah, that was the main deck. So the extra deck is pretty straightforward as well. I mean, really, you're just playing 2 sets of each of the Numerons. The only thing that's different is the cards that you play after the fact. So we're playing C1. This card, like, you hardly ever really bring it up, and I don't know, it's okay. I summoned it 3 times, actually, all night. And every single time, as it happens, they managed to remove the Numeron network, which was just bum. There was one instance, though, where I actually top-decked Numeron Wall in the draw phase, and before leaving the draw phase, I activated it, brought out network, and pulled this out in my standby phase, and still managed to burn them for game. That was a very one-time instance where that happened. But outside of that, the card is a very niche instance where you can clear a board with it for anything else that's remaining. If you don't know what this card does, it's just when it's Ixie summoned, all monsters on the field are banished, and then once per turn on the standby phase, if this was banished, you special summon it. And then if you have network, it burns your opponent for all of the Ixie's monsters attack points that were banished with it, while they're banished though. So you only really are gonna burn them for like 4,000, which is still good, but it is another like alternative board clear to where your opponent, like if you don't kill them, you can just stack it with 1 and just kind of wipe the board and still potentially burn them on the next turn. The only problem is you leave yourself open though, so almost tipped my camera there. So again, it's a really niche card, but it comes out. The Mega Clops, which is like most of the time just game winning in some cases. A lot of players struggle to deal with this card if they don't read it or pay attention. Appaloosa for going into 4 if you need to. I played Saruja. You know, I only went into this once, and the one time I went into it, he had Imperm, so sucked. But really, drawing cards can be useful. I had to give it back. I was borrowing an Underworld Goddess. Underworld Goddess is crazy in this deck because if you don't OTK or your opponent just has like a really big monster that you can't clear, you can just go into your 4 Numerons and use their monster, link into this, and it gives you something to play off of. And then just the 2 Synchros for the Gamma, which is Omega. And then Scrap Dragon we're playing because basically, like, if you don't really need Omega's effect to get something out of their hand, with Scrap Dragon, you can just pop a card on their board and this, so it's removal either way. So, pretty good. There's not anything else different I would play in the extra deck. The extra deck's pretty solid. All right, the side deck, which obviously has a lot of room to change over time, but this is what I played, and yeah, I didn't really have any problems, but I might consider some different things in the future. So the way I played the side deck, by the way, is I played more for going first. It sounds weird, but I'll show you, okay? So the psychology with this deck, and yes, we're playing 3 Droll. Droll is just, in my opinion, one of the best hand traps right now, going first or second against a lot of decks, and I did need something for Flunder, so. Anyways, the psychology with this deck is that if you OTK them game 1, bad players will be like, okay, he OTK'd me, I'm just not gonna go first, right? Good players will probably still go first, but they have side cards for this, like Anti-Spell or Twisters or whatever, right, to prevent me from facilitating the OTK. But D-Barrier, more than likely, you know, so they're just going to go first and try and open all that, which is fine. But when I lose and I have the option to go first, maybe if it's game 3 or something, it is kind of a risk because you have to draw the cards. But you play enough going first cards that you should be able to counter most decks to where you can stop them enough. That way you can facilitate the OTK next turn. Otherwise, they're just going to keep their side deck cards in and, you know, assuming you're going to go second, and then they kind of just have a better chance at beating you. So I figured the psychology is if I can go first on game, 2 or 3, or mostly 3, I can psych them out by trying to draw cards that just prevent them from playing on their turn, and then I can OTK them from there. Maybe, hopefully. So we have 3 Demise of the Land to help with getting out Network or getting out Mystic Mine. 3 Heat Wave. This is a personal card of mine that I've played in this deck for a while, and every time you activate it, it's insane. Just says that neither player can summon a monster except for set, basically, until your next turn. So if you activate this, people read it and they just say okay and pass their turn. It's pretty insane. 3 DD Ground, just because it affects a lot of decks like Punkthyrian and Despia. Well, Despia not so much, but it triggers a lot of decks to banish their monsters that they don't want to banish necessarily. So it's really good. And then the other cards I played, like, because I just didn't really know what to play, I played 2 D-Barrier, which, I mean, like, this card is good against, like, Sword Soul and Despia and things like that, so, again, it just kind of depends. The card is strong, no doubt. And then I played 1 Red Reboot, just in case I did come up against, like, trap decks or something like that. So, but yeah, that's the deck, guys. So, I hope you enjoyed the profile. Again, I went 5-0-1 with this. It was a fun time. I didn't play any Flunder, and I surprisingly didn't play any Punkthyrian, but I did play Despia. I played this weird, like, trap deck where the guy just basically, like, summoned a barrier statue and set a bunch of trap cards that I somehow managed to actually win. Actually, those games I did win on the back of Mystic Mine because he didn't have a main deck out. And then the other game I had drawn Lightning Storm, so that game just was what it was. Gosh, what was my round 3? Oh, I played Invoked Despia, which was the game that I drew against. That one was tough. He had Nibiru. That was one of the games where the Nibiru slowed me down a lot. And then I played against, my top 4 matchup was against, like, this adventure control deck that used Vanity's Fiend and the adventure package and Fossil Dyna, and that was exciting. Somehow managed to win that because Lava Golem's really good, and so is Droplet. And then my other round, Tri Brigade. And the Tri Brigade matchup was super easy. That match was a wipe. So, but yeah, man. So, I mean, it was 1 week of just having some good games. I'm going to continue to play around with this deck some more and try out some other combination of cards. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. If you have any questions or anything, please comment below, subscribe. Trying to have some more videos for you guys in the future. Cool. Team Evolution out.